Hi, and welcome to Dare to be Authentic podcast. I'm your host, Mari Mitchell, and I have a very special guest today. His name is Paul Rushworth-Brown. He's an English-born Australian historical fiction author whose latest novel, called Outback Odyssey, explores the raw beauty and buried truths of post-war Australia. An educator and advocate, Paul spent years living and working in the bush, experiences that deeply inform his writing. His novels blend vivid storytelling with historical depth, drawing on genealogy, forgotten histories, and first-hand encounters with Aboriginal stockmen. He's also the author of Skulduggery, Red Winter Journal, and Dream of Courage. Welcome to the show, Paul. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Mari. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been nothing but a pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your inspiration for your newest novel, Outback Odyssey.
Okay, so um, as you mentioned, I've written three other novels, and I always wanted to write a novel based on Australiana. So it's um, it's a historical novel set in the 1950s in Australia. It's a story of survival, identity, reckoning. On the surface, it follows a young Yorkshire immigrant that comes to Australia in the 1950s,
Mhm.
um, and they send him out to the brutal world of the outback um, to work on a sheep station.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you know, but our sheep stations can be, as big as England. Basically, they're huge.
Wow.
Um, and but it's as I mentioned in the pre-show, it's dual layered. So underneath that sort of like adventure romance story, there's a powerful allegorical, I suppose, symbolism about the silence of our national story and where the land remembers. Quite often, Australians try to forget.
So, what do you think the reader can expect from your novel?
Um, well, as I mentioned, if they just sort of like read it at face value, it's a gripping historical um, novel set in 1950s Australia, a bit of adventure, a bit of romance. It's heavily tied with Weiberg's Gold, which one of the characters is sort of like the great great grandfather of Weiberg, who worked on a ship called the SS Avoca, and he stole uh, uh, some Colombian sovereigns and then disappeared into the bush. And they never found all the sovereigns.
Mm,
So even today, there's still people in outback Victoria looking for them. But
wow.
what do readers take away from it? I had an interview with Beth Hildenbrand last week, and she's read the novel, and she said that the great thing about the novel was that it was a good story, great characters, but she also learnt so much about Australia. So um, I like when people read it, I like them to feel as if they are in the bush.
Mhm.
So there's the sounds, there's the smell, there's eucalyptus, there's fauna and flora, um, and sort of like on top of that, there's a pretty interesting love story, and I suppose the antagonist is actually Martin Weiberg's um, granddaughter's uncle, and he wants the station, and so he takes her to court, and the only way that she can, I suppose, keep the land because there's an Aboriginal mob or clan living on the land that she is heavily involved with, um, and the only way she can keep the land is by finding this gold. But there's lots of twists and turns, and there's a very very good insight into First Nations culture,
Mhm.
and eventually Jimmy, the main protagonist, actually becomes um, initiated into the mob.
Wow.
So you get a very good interesting, I suppose, insight into First Nations First Nations culture. And over here, some people are saying, what's what's a an English-born white fella doing writing about First Nations culture? But I don't write for Aboriginal people. Basically, I write a story
Hmm.
that echoes some of their feelings and some of the land's, um, I suppose, atmospheric presence. And so that's the top layer. The second layer, in 2023, we had a referendum, and it was called the Yes referendum.
Hmm.
And basically, it was a referendum to give First Nations people a say in Parliament. Anyway, it was knocked back by the country, and I was a bit disappointed that about that. There's a huge disparity between the health of First Nations people in Australia and non-Indigenous people,
Hmm.
and yeah, I just think they've been given a bit of a raw deal. They actually own the land. They've been living here for 60,000 years, and I think there's certain wisdom and things that they know that we don't, and I don't think we appreciate that enough. And I
Right.
think that we as Australians need to be more accepting of their wisdom and them.
I agree. So you spent time in the bush yourself. How much did that shape some of the scenes and what you wrote about in the book?
Oh, huge! Like somebody yesterday asked me, what's it like, sort of like living and working in the bush, and you can't really it's not a thing, it's a feeling. It's
Hmm.
a feeling, it's almost like the land owns you. I mean, it's a
Hmm.
tough place to work and live. I remember sort of like we used to live in sort of like I was working as a navvy for Queensland Railways, and we were out at a place called Hewenden, and out in the outback, and we'd spend sort of like 8, 9 hours a day just ripping up old railway track, and replacing it. And it was so hot, like in the middle of the day to get up to sort of like 42 degrees. We'd get home at sort of like 6 o'clock, and we couldn't, or 5 o'clock, we couldn't have a shower until sort of like 7 or 8 because it was a mobile camp.
Hmm.
We had these mobile showers and toilets, and the pipes were on top of the ground, and the sun in the day would just like boil them. So you'd go to turn on the cold water, and it'd be bubbling.
Oh my goodness.
And
Wow.
just the flies, like that we have something called smoker, which is like a break in the day, and you pick up a sandwich and go to put it in your mouth, and there'd be 50 flies, so
Oh,
like sitting on the bread as you went to take a bite, and as you try to sort of like swipe them away, and by the time you went to take another bite, they'd be back again. So
wow.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, so I did that for quite a while, but yeah, so like the land, obviously, First Nations people um, they're they're very very connected to the land and the dreaming, and I'm not going to go into that too much, but the land and is almost like their church,
Hmm.
and white Australians back in the 1800s basically took their church away from them. They as you mentioned, with your native people, a lot of our First Nations people were taken away from their families, taken away from the land,
Yes.
and put in missions, and that's all that type of, I suppose, that's also like part of the novel.
Hmm.
But I don't preach; I just tell a story,
Right.
and the allegorical parts of it. Um, if you didn't know to look for them, you wouldn't even see them. It's just like an adventure, romance story.
I love that. I love that you did that because you wrote an adventure romance story. People love that. But then the underlayer is something that's very important to you, obviously, or you wouldn't be writing
Yeah,
it. And I love when authors do that. because it gives such depth to the book. It's not,
Yeah,
and maybe
yeah,
everybody won't get to that depth, but people will. And it's
yeah,
a really important message.
yeah. And Beth Hildenbrand on Book from Beth the other day, she read the book and she said that one of the great things that she loved about it was, there's great characters, great story, but she also learned so much about Australia that she didn't know. So I suppose that's also giving good old Oz a bit of a plug doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. Very good. So, what's the main message that you want to bring to the public
Through the book.
through the
I
book?
suppose be 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 more accepting of the wisdom of First Nations culture, and I suppose the tapestry they bring to, or the tapestry that they can bring to our modern world.
Hmm.
Um, and also, I think in a lot of cases, I mean, I suppose that's one reason why the referendum was knocked back, or in the Australian referendum, um, the yes vote was knocked back was because I think people are scared, and I think they're scared of things that they don't understand.
Right.
And I mean, the referendum to give them a voice in Parliament, you know, it wasn't going to allow them to or First Nations people to change the constitution or anything like that. They just wanted to say. I
Hmm.
mean, First Nations people, and as I say, none of this is in the novel, you
Okay.
know, but First Nations people, I mean, they didn't get the vote in Australia until I think it was the 70s.
Wow.
So I think, yeah, the point is to, I suppose, be able to appreciate um, the richness of First Nations culture and that type of thing. And I mean, I've been up to Arnhem Land, which is way up in the Northern Territory, right on the edge of the top of Australia,
Hmm.
and it's like another world. It
Wow.
really is. And I think you need a special permit to go in there.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, you'd think weren't in Australia.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I mean, I learned saw the ancient rock carvings or rock paintings, on the escarpments, and the crocodiles in the rivers, and that type of thing. And I mean, some of these rock paintings, they go back to sort of like one in particular I remember went back to when you know F First Nations people first saw a ship, like an old sort of like ship with the sails and that.
Right.
And they actually painted this on this rock carving.
Wow. They were
And just to
documenting what they saw.
yeah, so just to think that a First Nations people painted that, over 200 years ago, um, is quite amazing.
That is quite amazing. I love what you say about the wisdom, and I also was struck with what you said about their land almost being the religion, their religion. We have the same thing with Native Americans here, and also
Mm,
with uh, Alaskans, the original Alaskans.
yeah,
And there's something about being so connected with the land that, of course, we've lost through the years because
yeah,
many of us live in places that is mostly cement. There's no land. When you
yeah.
were out on the bush, was there something you said that it's a feeling
Mm.
more than anything when you describe it? What kind of feelings were coming to you?
Um, I remember a number of years ago, I went. This is sort of like before um, Uluru became, or what you may know as Ayers Rock. The big rock in the middle of Central Australia.
Yeah,
It's called Uluru, and back then it was called Ayers Rock. And I remember, this is before huge tourism. I mean, there's buses going there sort of like every day now, but they're only allowed in certain places because obviously Uluru belongs to First Nations people, and a lot of the places around Uluru are special men's places, special women's places where you're not allowed to go. and they have corroborees and that type of thing. But anyway, getting back to the story, before the hotels nearby and that type of thing, I went to Ayers Rock and I actually slept right at the base of it.
Wow.
You couldn't do that now. I mean, back in those days, you could actually climb it. And of course, all that's been stopped.
Hmm.
Um, but I sort of like I just had my swag and I was just sort of like laying down, looking up at the stars, and out there because there isn't much light. The stars look like they're here.
Mm.
They're so bright and Southern Cross and all that type of thing. But yeah, it was sort of like it felt like, and oh, that's right. And then when I was because I made a little fire, right, and in the background I could hear these. There must have been some corroboree going on somewhere, and of course, the noise out there carries for miles and miles and miles.
Right.
But I remember, kicking out the fire, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get in a bit of trouble here." And then it stopped for a little while, and you could hear the didgeridoo, and you could hear you couldn't hear dancing, but you could hear sort of like First Nations sort of like singing and that type of thing. And it was really sort of like an amazing, I'll never forget, it was an amazing cultural experience sitting there sort of like at the base of Ayers Rock with a small fire, the stars, nothing else around, no other people, and just having that sort of like feeling of being amongst um, that in that environment and feeling totally at peace and
Mhm.
and that type of thing actually comes out in the novel.
Okay. Wow, what an experience that is. And you were all by yourself? Nobody was with you?
Yeah, yeah.
You're pretty brave.
Yeah. I wouldn't do it now. Oh, you can't do it now anyway,
You
but
can't do it, but
yeah,
if you
yeah,
could, you wouldn't, right?
yeah, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about authenticity since the show is
Hmm.
called Dare to Be Authentic. What role
Yeah.
does authenticity play in all this for you in your novel writing and also in your life if you want to share?
Authenticity. Um, well, obviously spending a lot of time in the outback, um, and going to places like Arnhem Land and a lot of the, I suppose, special places in Australia. It gives me, I suppose, an insight that into those types of places that maybe, I mean, very few people go to Arnhem Land,
Mhm.
because obviously because of the permit that's required and that type of thing. But yeah, it gives me, I suppose, an authentic view of of First Nations culture. But also on top of that, you know, I spent an enormous amount of time researching um, for the novel,
Mhm.
but only being very, very respectful and only using um, certain things about First Nations culture that was actually in the public domain.
Okay.
And there is actually a part in the book um, where I've actually blocked out part of the story and said, out of respect for our First Nations people, this part of the story has been, it's only a paragraph, this part of the story has been omitted. And so I suppose being authentic is and being true to and honest
Hmm.
about about things, I suppose gives it that authenticity.
Yeah.
And as I say, I don't preach. I just tell a story and expect people to sort of like just read it as a historical fiction novel, or go underneath and try to figure out some of the allegorical um, aspects of it.
Right.
So um, authenticity. I think that um, as far as a white fella can go, I think it's about as authentic as somebody could write.
Right. Awesome. So why do you think you mentioned that people don't think about these First Nation people, don't really think about it, what was done to them, what they've suffered, etc. Same thing happens here. with our Native Americans. Why do you think this is something that has been so important for you? Because obviously you've been um, touched by this.
Yeah. I just sort of like think that, you know, I was born in England, left there when I was very young. But when you look at sort of like some of the colonization that's occurred around the world, um, through the British,
Mhm.
um, a lot of sort of like First Nations people, not just in Australia, but in in other parts of the world as well, have been given a raw deal.
Yeah.
Um, and I sound like I'm preaching at the moment, but as I say, this isn't sort of like something that sort of like comes out in the book.
Mhm.
Um, um, and I suppose part of my reason for going there was that I think as a species, we can do better.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into the political aspects of what's going on in the world at the moment, but I think as a species we can get better. And I think also because I suppose it's um, the things that Outback Odyssey actually touches on are things that Australians try to tuck away and not think about,
Hmm.
right? And there's a quite a big I suppose um, movement in Australia about reconciliation and that type of thing. And I just think that sometimes you know not being so in your face and trying to, I suppose, not make changes, but have people think about certain things is less confronting,
Hmm.
especially for Australians.
Yeah.
And and when Australians or Americans sort of like read the book, I want them to appreciate, you know, the fact that First Nations people have something to give,
Yeah.
you know, um, and I think, as I say, we as a species, I think we're better than that.
Yeah. I agree. I totally agree with you, Paul. So, what was the favorite part for you for writing the book?
Probably the ending,
Ooh.
because I don't plan anything when I write.
Hmm.
It's just like for me, it's just like a movie
Yeah.
taking place before my eyes, and
Hmm.
that's where my stories come from.
Okay.
And I wrote the ending probably about three times, and you'd never pick it. You'd never pick it.
So it's a surprise.
And that was probably my favorite part to write,
I
because
could tell.
I think it brings everything to not to closure, but it brings everything together.
Right.
But also, somebody asked me, are you, because my last three books, obviously, it was part of a trilogy. And my other, somebody asked me, are you going to write another one? I said, well, it depends on how this one is um, taken by the public.
Hmm.
But in the novel at the end, I've put to be continued. But I don't,
Oh,
I don't,
that's pretty
because there's a,
good. I like it.
yeah, because the novel sort of ends, and you think, oh, and then there's a letter which sort of like, I suppose, sparks thoughts of, oh, wow, what's gonna, oh, hold on, the book's finished. I want to find out what
Yes.
happens next.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah,
That
yeah,
sounds amazing. It's funny you
yeah,
should say about the movie because I'm a writer as well. And I have the same experience. And I've never heard anybody say that. I don't
yeah,
know what's going to happen. It's like I'm watching a
yeah,
movie. So I love
yeah.
that. It's fantastic. Very good. So is there, I have to ask you the opposite question. What was your least favorite part about writing the book?
Um, I had to be, I don't want to give too much away, but I had to be very, very respectful and very, very careful with some of the First Nations
Hmm.
cultural cultural aspects when it came to the main protagonist, Jimmy. So it was a lot of thought, it was a lot of research, it was a lot of uh, thought about the best way to do it without without in the most respectful way. And
Right.
it took me a long time. It took me a long time because basically what happens is because Jimmy has spent, his parents died when he was 12, so he spent a lot of years in an orphanage before he came out to Australia. And I suppose because he spent so much time in an orphanage, there's this whole metaphor of belonging. He doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere,
Hmm.
and he's left what used to be his home. He's sat on a boat for 8 weeks, just arrived in this country that he knew nothing about, and then he's shipped out to the outback. So
Mm.
he's sort of like he feels like he doesn't belong anywhere. So that's sort of like a heavy metaphor in the novel,
Right.
and eventually he learns how to belong um, through the advice and wisdom of a First Nations elder.
Nice. Wow. You're just making us all want to buy and read the book. That's awesome. So we're going to be running out of time soon, but I wanted to say, is there one last thing you'd like to say to a listener? Something that's on your heart today?
Um, I think that this is probably the piece of work that I'm most proud of,
Hmm.
and I think that the way it comes across, both in that top layer and the bottom layer, is very important. I think anybody that sort of like reads it um, would have I suppose, a whole new understanding for our country, for I suppose the cultural aspects of our country, and yeah,
Awesome. Very good. When you started out writing the book, did you know there would be two layers?
yeah,
You
yeah,
knew. Okay.
because I wanted to my other three novels are really in it's basically English historical fiction, and
Okay.
I wanted to write it. I wanted to write a novel that actually meant something, because I'm an educator. I'm a high school teacher, and I wanted this fourth novel, um, A, to be Australiana, but B, I wanted to say something that I believe or I thought might be important,
Hmm.
and I think it does in a roundabout way, and in a subliminal way it does. So that was really important to me.
Very good. Well, Paul, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show, listening about the book. I can't wait to read it. And I hope I get the the undercurrent. If I don't, I'll be very sad, but I
Yeah,
think I will. And it's just a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on Dare to Be Up Untainted podcast today. And for those of you listening, make sure that you pass this on to other people, especially if they like historical novels, especially if they're interested in Australia and in the First Nation people. And bye till next time.
thanks, Mara.
Thank you.